On June 6, 1944, German troops along the Atlantic Wall awoke to an overwhelming sight. More than 5,000 ships and landing craft dotted the horizon. In a few hours, 11,000 warplanes blanketed the skies, while 156,000 Allied soldiers stormed the sandy beaches of Normandy. As the first wave hit the shore amidst a maelstrom of machine gun fire, seawater, and smoke, they encountered the gruesome sight of their comrades shredded by relentless artillery fire from the fortified high ground above the beaches. The 2nd Ranger Battalion, led by Lieutenant Colonel James Earl Rudder, faced a critical and near impossible task: scaling a 100-foot cliff at Pointe du Hoc. A battery of long-range 155mm guns, poised to unleash devastation on Utah and Omaha Beaches, had to be destroyed. General Omar Bradley, commander of the United States 12th Army Group, called it, quote, "the most dangerous mission of D-Day." Inch by inch, suffering staggering casualties, the Rangers clawed their way up, dodging rifle fire, grenades and rocks hurled by the determined German defenders above, intent on cutting them down before they could reach the summit. Little did the surviving Rangers know that what awaited them at the top was not what they anticipated. As US Rangers began their impossible climb up Pointe du Hoc during D-Day, their only firepower support came from the might of Allied warships firing from afar. Now, 80 years later, you can command these powerful vessels in World of Warships. World of Warships offers an unparalleled naval warfare experience, immersing you in history's greatest battles, including the epic clashes of D-Day. With new content released monthly, you can experience the pivotal naval events of June 6, 1944, with the World of Warships D-Day event. Pay homage to the heroes of Normandy as you dive into massive 12 versus 12 battles inspired by those historic events. The roster of over 500 meticulously detailed warships, modeled from historical blueprints, is about to expand with a special D-Day 80th anniversary event. Choose from diverse ship classes, each with its own tactical edge, and whether you command battleships, agile destroyers, versatile cruisers, or strategic aircraft carriers, there's a ship for every commander. Take your warship into the English Channel, fighting for the Allies to clear the way for the invasion force or for the Axis, in a desperate battle to change the course of history. Explore 40 unique maps with dynamic weather and stunning water effects, and command the seas solo or team up with friends in division mode for next-level strategy and excitement. What are you waiting for? Use the invite code D-Day 80th to get 200 doubloons, 7 days of premium time, 1 million credits, and more. Unlock ships like the Phoenix, Kuma, Corbett, Dante Alighieri, and Wakeful after just 15 battles, plus 3x special D-Day missions after 9 battles. But hurry up. It's only for a limited time. Click the link in the description below to register and start your naval adventure today with World of Warships, where history meets explosive action. Perched on the cliffs, the German positions held the ultimate high ground, delivering blistering fire on anyone brave enough to approach the beaches below. The towering cliffs were natural fortresses, making any direct assault by Allied troops a daunting endeavor. The Atlantic Wall, an imposing network of defenses, was forged under the watchful eye of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel in late 1943. This colossal undertaking spanned from the Spanish border to the rugged shores of Norway. Keenly aware of Normandy's strategic value, Rommel funneled massive resources to fortify this region, betting it would be the Allies' target. He exploited the commanding high ground and cliffs to construct an impenetrable defense line. A crucial part of this defense was Pointe du Hoc, a towering cliff soaring over 100 feet above the English Channel, strategically situated between Utah Beach and Omaha Beach in Normandy, France. Its lofty height made it a crucial stronghold for the German forces, a vantage point that dominated the surrounding landscape. As D-Day loomed, the mission to neutralize the coastal defense battery at Pointe du Hoc stood as a critical hurdle for a victorious landing. Nestled 4 miles west of Omaha Beach, the German stronghold was rumored to harbor 6 155 mm howitzers. These massive cannons, mounted on heavy wheels and fixed to a central pivot atop a concrete platform about 40 feet across, were camouflaged with netting. Lacking gun turrets or protective shields, a stout concrete observation post instead orchestrated their blistering barrages. With a range exceeding 10 miles, these guns were a dire threat, capable of pounding Utah and Omaha Beaches and blocking troop ships in the English Channel from nearing the coastline. The tactical headache intensified with Allied assessments, painting Pointe du Hoc as virtually impregnable from land or sea. Perched on the flat summit of Pointe du Hoc, the terrain abruptly fell away into rocky cliffs that soared 85 to 100 feet high. This rugged promontory thrust into the English Channel, forming a stark geological arrowhead flanked east and west by menacing gun positions. At the cliff's base, a slender strip of beach offered the only foothold for an assault, heavily guarded by a lethal array of anti-aircraft artillery and machine gun nests. The Germans had fortified their position with underground concrete bunkers and magazines, all linked by an intricate network of trenches. The perimeter bristled with mines, booby traps, and barbed wire, forming a daunting gauntlet. This impenetrable fortress had to be dismantled at any cost, and the gutsy men of the 2nd Ranger Battalion were tapped for this audacious task. The night before D-Day, General Omar Bradley briefed Lieutenant Colonel James Earl Rudder, the commander of the 2nd Ranger Battalion, emphasizing that Pointe du Hoc was the most impenetrable point on the Normandy invasion front. The triumph of the American landings at Utah and Omaha Beaches depended crucially on silencing the big guns there. Unwavering, Rudder shot back confidently, quote, "Sir, my Rangers can do the job for you." The Rangers grasped the total weight of their orders, recognizing that survival might be a long shot. Private First Class Morris Prince of a company, 2nd Ranger Battalion, vividly described the daunting prospect, saying, quote, "The point was a massive fortress. No wonder Hitler himself had boasted of the impunity of this position and of the foolishness of the Allies to ever think, let's try, to break through this impregnable fortress." For operational effectiveness, Rudder's Rangers were temporarily integrated with the forces of the 116th Regiment of the 29th Infantry Division. They were divided into 3 tactical units to streamline command and control. Task Forces A, B, and C Task Force A included a headquarters group and companies D, E, and F of the 2nd Battalion. Scheduled for an H-hour assault at 6:30 a.m., they were to storm Beach Charlie, situated 4 miles west of Omaha Beach. Company D was tasked with assaulting the western flank, while Companies E and F were to attack the eastern flank. Their mission was clear: scale the daunting cliffs, demolish the enemy artillery and fortifications, and push inland to secure the coastal highway, effectively cutting off German reinforcements from the American beaches. Task Forces B and C were designated to play supporting roles in this critical operation. For the preliminary strike, planners allocated 10 landing craft assault ships, or LCAs, to deploy the 3 companies of Rudder's Rangers, with about 20 soldiers per boat. Each craft was kitted out with 3 sets of rocket mounts stationed at the bow, amidship, and stern, all controlled from the stern for synchronized firing. The first pair of rockets were rigged, with simple 3/4-inch ropes tethered to the rockets by connecting wires. A second pair was designed with a rope and toggle system, complete with small wooden crossbars for grip. The final set included rope ladders, each rocket capped with a 3-pronged steel grapnel. In case the onboard rocket-powered ropes malfunctioned, each LCA was equipped with a backup portable handheld rocket projector with plain ropes. Additionally, the Rangers were armed with 2 styles of extension ladders. The first wave brought 100 12-foot ladders composed of 28 4-foot tubular steel sections, each weighing 4 pounds, pre-assembled into 16-foot segments. Following closely were 4 amphibious DUKW vehicles, each transporting a 100-foot extension ladder borrowed from the London Fire Brigade, modified with twin Lewis machine guns mounted at the top. Given the urgent pace of the operation, the Rangers' loadout was stripped down for swift action. Each Ranger carried a chocolate D-bar for sustenance, 2 grenades, and an M1 Garand rifle. The unit's top climbers took the lead, armed with pistols or carbines. Supporting firepower included 4 Browning automatic rifles, bars, 2 light mortars, and 10 thermite grenades per company. In the rear, 2 supply boats hauled the bulk of the gear, The Rangers' packs, additional rations, extra ammunition, explosives and equipment for hoisting supplies up the cliffs. The assault was to receive robust support from the Air Corps, Navy and airborne forces. In preparation, bombers from the US 8th Air Force and the British Royal Air Force hammered Pointe du Hoc to weaken German defences. Just 20 minutes before H-hour, the US destroyer Satterley and British destroyer Talibont were slated to bombard the area with heavy naval artillery. Meanwhile, paratroopers and glider troops would launch behind enemy lines, severing communications, inflicting casualties, and diverting German reserves to create chaos and confusion. The Rangers, steeled for their daunting task, had banked on the Allied bombing raids to significantly weaken Pointe du Hoc ahead of their attack. However, the airstrikes disappointingly missed their mark by around 3 miles, leaving the enemy fortifications largely intact. This blunder meant the American GIs would confront a deeply entrenched adversary, perched on the jagged heights overlooking Utah and Omaha Beaches, priming them for a brutal encounter. Intelligence reports had pinpointed the 832nd Army Coastal Battery as the unit manning the powerful guns at Pointe du Hoc. They were bolstered by roughly 200 artillerymen and infantry from the 716th Infantry Division. Notably, this unit included a mix of personnel with 40% non-German and 3/4 of these being Polish, stationed near Saint-Pierre-du-Mont. A reserve battalion lay in wait at Bayeux, ready to reinforce. At the crack of 4 a.m. on June 6th, the order resounded, quote, "Rangers, man your craft." Companies D, E and F, alongside a squad from Headquarters Company, embarked upon 11 landing craft assault, each loaded with 22 soldiers and essential gear. With precision, the boats were lowered into the choppy waters using ropes and pulleys. The pre-assault bombardment kicked off as the LCAs bobbed and gathered in formation, awaiting the go-ahead. Private First Class Maurice Prince captured the explosive start. Quote, "A rending and thunderous ovation of shell whizzing overhead signaled the beginning and the breaking loose of all hell. Our supporting Navy was starting its process of softening up the enemy's beach defences. As yet, we were still out of the enemy's accurate firing range, although some return shells did land to our rear. The distant and distinct hum of friendly aircraft became audible, and soon the planes and bombers became visible. From the get-go, the Rangers were soaked through, and the turbulent seas wreaked havoc, leaving many violently seasick. Prince recalled the grim reality. Quote, "Puke bags, which had been issued to us prior to our embarking the LCAs, came into play. A few boys were leaning over the rails trying to revive themselves by letting the onrushing water wet their faces. The sea raged tumultuously, a fierce mirror to the chaos unfolding on the beaches ahead. In a sudden surge, a massive wave slammed into LCA 860, capsizing it and casting its Rangers into the icy grip of the channel. As they were hauled from the water, their pleas for dry clothes to rejoin the battle echoed pitifully. However, numbed by the cold, the ship's doctor ordered their urgent evacuation to England for medical treatment. Aware of the grim fate that befell their comrades on LCA 860, the Rangers in the remaining crafts frantically used their helmets to bail out the invading seawater as they charged toward their daunting objective. Amidst their struggle, enemy rockets began to splash into the water perilously close, signaling the GI's nearing approach to the shore. Lieutenant Gerald Heaney rallied his men, reminding them that they were the vanguard, the first Americans to set foot on these shores, spearheading a monumental invasion. When the boats were just 70 yards from the cliffs, the enemy unleashed a barrage of 20 mm fire. One craft took a direct hit, felling and wounding several Rangers in a burst of violence. Corporal Lou Lisco from E Company aboard LCA 722 recounted the harrowing scene. Quote, "John J. Silman was hit in the upper chest. Blood spewed everywhere. Silman was groaning and moaning. Bullets from machine guns and rifles were flying in the air from the top of the Hoc and nobody dared to help him." As the Rangers closed in on the shore about 35 yards from the cliff's base, they launched their rope-carrying rockets. Tragically, most of the ropes, heavy with seawater, failed to reach their marks. Some landed uselessly on the clay bottoms, and others were severed by vigilant German defenders. In a desperate pivot, the Rangers deployed portable rockets from the shoreline, finally giving the following units a fighting chance to scale the towering cliffs. Then it happened. The ramp dropped and the Rangers crashed into the sand as bullets zipped all around them. E Company's men sprang from the landing craft, rallying behind Rudder towards the treacherous shore. Amidst the chaos, some Rangers vanished into underwater bomb craters, trapped by the slippery clay bottom. Lieutenant James Eichner, the last to disembark, recounted the harrowing moment. Quote, "I ran down the ramp and in the water about up to my knees and headed across what I thought was the beach and stepped into a shell hole that was covered with water. I went down over my head and of course we were under fire. There was one machine gun, especially on our left flank. Some of our people were getting hit, and I remember one young man that was hit 3 times on the landing craft and twice more on the beach. Upon reaching the cliffs, the Rangers didn't hesitate. They began to free climb, jabbing their bayonets into the slippery rock face to carve makeshift handholds. Even the most adept climbers found the ascent daunting. Soon a 16-foot extension ladder topped with a toggle rope was erected atop a 40-foot pile of mud and dirt. One ranger scaled this precarious setup, slicing footholds into the cliff with his bayonet to aid the next man up. Above them, the enemy unleashed a torrent of hostility. Grenades, rocks, and bursts of rifle fire rained down, with the Germans even pouring water over the edges in a desperate bid to dislodge the ascending Rangers. The climb was agonizingly slow, each move fraught with danger, further compounded by vicious machine gun fire flanking their precarious ascent. After a grueling climb, Technician 5th Grade George J. Putzek finally reached the summit. Lying flat atop the crest and clutching the top rung under his arm, Putzek anchored himself firmly, providing a vital lifeline as the rest of Rudder's boat team swiftly followed, scaling the point in less than 15 minutes. This successful ascent was merely the first of many, as the operation needed to be replicated multiple times to amass a considerable force at the cliff's top. During these repeated climbs, casualties escalated both on the cliff face and the beaches below, where numerous Rangers were struck down before they could even touch the sand. Lieutenant Wintz, buoyed by the progress of earlier climbers, seized a plain rope and embarked on his own climb. Battling exhaustion, slippery, mud-soaked ropes and treacherous clay, Wintz poured every ounce of his strength into the ascent, ultimately conquering the cliff. Upon reaching the top, he quickly rallied 6 Rangers, forming a squad dedicated to neutralizing the German artillery positions. Once disembarked from the LCAs, most Rangers took 15 to 20 minutes to conquer the daunting cliffs. By 7:30 a.m., the battalion had already suffered the loss of 2 LCAs, 1 DUKW, and over 20 Rangers either lost or wounded. Despite these losses, they had successfully penetrated Hitler's vaunted Atlantic Wall. With the cliff behind them, the Rangers focused intently on their critical objectives: locating and dismantling the 155 mm guns, cutting off German communications, and securing their positions until reinforcements could bolster their ranks. For the 2nd Rangers, however, the hardest challenges were still ahead. Atop Pointe du Hoc, the Rangers were thrust into a surreal landscape of devastation. Bomb craters had transformed familiar landmarks into an unrecognizable terrain strewn with debris, complicating navigation and communication among the units. Despite the disarray, the assault pressed on. Each company was divided into 4 squads, each tasked with specific targets within the enemy's defenses. E Company was assigned to neutralize gun number 3, secure the coastal highway, and demolish a concrete observation post. Meanwhile, F Company's objective was to dismantle the anti-aircraft gun on the eastern flank and neutralize gun positions 1 and 2, then regroup along the coastal highway. On the western flank, D Company aimed to take out gun positions 4, 5, and 6, and then push inland to establish a roadblock on the coastal highway to block any German reinforcements from Grand Camp. A section from E Company was tasked with forming a defensive perimeter around the battalion headquarters at the point. Leading the 3rd group from E Company, First Sergeant Robert Lang and his team climbed to their objective at gun position number 3. Approaching cautiously, they discovered the casemates were merely a facade, splintered wood and twisted steel jutting out awkwardly. A clever German ruse using a telephone pole to mimic a gun from aerial views. Amused by the deception, one ranger remarked, quote, "Man, the Navy really did a number on them, didn't they, Sarge?" Quickly recalibrating, E Company redirected their efforts towards establishing defensive positions on the coastal highway. To their left, F Company made a stealthy advance towards gun positions 1 and 2. Navigating from crater to crater, they arrived to find the gun emplacements eerily abandoned. Meanwhile, D Company's 2nd Platoon, led by Sergeant Lomel and Lieutenant George Kirchner, made their way towards the western gun positions. Their initial target, gun number 4, was also missing. Under heavy machine gun and sniper fire, they pressed onto gun position 6, only to discover those casemates were empty as well. It seemed they had faced the deadliest D-Day mission for nothing. Some rangers had spotted wheel tracks leading away from the gun emplacement, theorizing the guns had been moved. While a few stayed to engage the German resistance, Lomel and the rest of D Company followed the wheel tracks south toward the coastal highway. Proceeding with extreme caution to sidestep mines, Lomel and Kuhn came across a camouflaged draw. The point man, First Sergeant Leonard Lommel, instinctively signaled for a halt. Leaning in, he murmured to his comrade, quote, "Here they are, we've found them." Lomel later described his rapid, decisive action. Quote, "While I was in there, I couldn't see the Germans, but I knew they had to be nearby. Using thermite grenades, I aimed to weld the moving parts. Gears, cranks, hinges, breech blocks. Anywhere I could place a couple of grenades. Their intense heat would weld these parts together, rendering the guns useless. That molten metal, wherever it flowed, must have done the job. I don't think I spent more than 10 minutes destroying those guns. I was confident I'd done my job. We didn't look back, we didn't waste a second." After successfully disabling the 2 hidden guns, Lomel took the butt of his submachine gun to the sights on 5 other heavy artillery pieces. The 2 sergeants then raced back to the roadblock to secure more grenades. The Rangers' valiant efforts at Pointe du Hoc stretched over 2 grueling days as they fended off relentless German counterattacks. They climbed 100-foot cliffs under punishing fire, dismantled the heavy guns that threatened the invasion beaches, stormed enemy fortifications, disrupted movements along the coastal highway, and staunchly held their positions with extraordinary bravery. Their actions marked them as the first American force on D-Day to fully accomplish their designated mission. Despite historical debates suggesting the Rangers' efforts were in vain due to the displacement of the guns, more considered historical perspectives recognized the mission's pivotal role. Even though the guns were not operational when the Rangers made their ascent, leaving them intact would have allowed the Germans to redeploy them, posing a substantial threat to the Allied advances at Utah and Omaha Beaches. The Rangers' actions at Pointe du Hoc were indeed critical to the broader success of the Normandy invasion. Command your fleet in D-Day, history's most daring invasion, and experience naval warfare like never before with World of Warships. Click the link in the description and use code D-Day 80th to get started with exclusive perks today.